tech talk, we'll have Matteo Castellani, who's our lead cloud solutions architect here at IONOS, and he'll present to us the graphical user interface that we use for our cloud. It's called Data Center Designer, or DCD, and he'll show us how easy and simple it is to actually design, build, and deploy workloads in the cloud within minutes, literally. So you'll be demonstrated how it works, and of course you'll have time for a Q&A session in the end, where you can really ask questions about how, any particulars really about your workloads and how you think they will play out on our cloud. So those questions that you may have, feel free to pop into the chat window here on the right hand side. And we also have an email for them. So even if you come up with a question later on, feel free to drop us a line. I'll pop it here in the chat. Email us at product@cloud.ionos.co.uk, and we'll come back to you, or simply just drop it here in the chat. We'll review those questions at the end. And let me have a look at the time. Possibly I'll give it like a minute more or less, and then let's kick it off. Yeah, maybe we can start. So let me go through the slides. Like I say, the agenda is we'll have a demonstration of the DCD, and in the end we'll have a chat with our cloud solutions expert. Let me introduce him. We've got Matteo Castellani here on the line, and he'll be doing this demonstration for you guys. Without further ado, giving the mic to him.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see how lots of people here at the webinar. My name is Matteo. What I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about our DCD and how it works. And first, a little bit of an introduction about me. I've been working for the past 20 years in IT, and what I've done is done a little bit of everything, really. I worked with software development company. I worked with security company. I done lots of work in automation and lots of work in hosting. And what I'm really going to try to show you today is how cloud should be intimidating. It's definitely something different from the usual dedicated system or virtualized system, but it's something like all the new things. Once that you get used to it, it's quite easy to understand, quite easy to get hold of it. And with our DCD that we're going to see now, you will see how easy it is to put some load online and be able to start immediately. So, conscious of the time, without further ado, let's crack on. You should be able to see my screen right now that says DCD. What I am gonna show you is how easy it is to log in. The DCD control panel, you can find it at dcd.ionos.com. And what you will see is on the right hand side of the form where to log in and password. But if you do not have a username and password to our DCD, which I remind you is different from the IONOS consumer side of the business, what we call the core side, you can click on start a free trial, and you're going to have a bonus for 1 month, so you can try our cloud services. Our control panel also supports the two-step verification. And this is really important because in terms of security, you always want to be able to have your user. You don't want to be brute force. So now I've disabled it because obviously this is a demo. Doesn't really make sense. This is a test account, so you know there's limited damage that could be done, and I always keep it under my eyes. But it's really easy to set up and really easy to get your user to use it. In fact, it's supported by all the major two-factor authentication application that you find on Apple or you find on Google. Once that you click on login, you will find yourself with this control panel, where on the right hand side there's resource allocation. And what the resource allocation is nothing else than a soft limit for the resources that you are allowed to use. You see a goal IP addresses, directly attached storage, SSD, hard drive, RAM, and CPU. And this is nothing else than a soft limit. You can raise it anytime you want. If you want, this is just the security that you're not going to spend more than at the end of the month, even if someone goes crazy and starts spinning up CPUs and servers without control. What we're going to do, we're going to just create a data center today, and we're going to call it simply test demo. And this data center will represent your virtualized environment. This is literally the equivalent of having a cage inside the physical data center. Everything that we're going to put inside this virtual data center, or VDC, is going to be isolated from all the other VDCs that you have in your account, and you can have as many VDC as you want to separate workloads. So you can have a VDC for dev, test, pre-production, and production if you want to. The name is obviously mandatory. Description, you can leave it blank. And then it's important to understand that we do have data centers in Europe, in Germany, in Spain, and United Kingdom, and 2 data centers in the US. If you want to be GDPR compliant, which is quite a hot topic today, having your data center in Europe is a must. The moment that you spin up a data center in the US, you will be under the Cloud Act. It's not a material for now, but it's obviously an interesting discussion that if you want to have it, just please get in touch and we can have together. For the purpose of today, I'm just going to spin up a data center in the UK. Once I click on Create Data Center, nothing is really created. I'm not paying for anything specifically. This is just a data center designer. Till I've actually clicked on the button Provision Change, nothing of what I put into this desk, into this kind of Visio diagram, if you want, is real. On the left-hand side, I've got a palette with all the artifacts that I can use to deploy my infrastructure. And on the right-hand side, there's what I usually call the properties of the object. I do also have Manager Resources over here, which gives me a list of utilities to manage my account, from the User Manager to the Backup Unit Manager and the SSH Key Manager, which is going to be really important for us. We're talking about Cloud Server, and the offer that IONOS has about cloud servers is the Cloud Cube and the Enterprise servers. Let's give it a name. As you see, I'm just dragging and drop the machines, the virtual machines over here. Once I click on a machine, I immediately get the properties of the machine. And I can directly change name, for example. This is our Enterprise Cloud Server. Let's call it NT. And this is our Cloud Cube. Let's call it Cloud Cube. And you can spot immediately some differences in between the two. The Cloud Cube comes with a t-shirt size range where CPUs, memory, and storage are all bundled up together. Yes, there is a way to expand the storage, but this virtual machine is like all the other hyperscalers virtual machine. It just, you can't vertically scale it, or you can't increase the storage size. Everything comes in a single bundle, and if you want to migrate your workload that is inside this machine, you will have to organize a proper migration from one to another. The cubes are really cheap. I'll suggest you to go and check what the price is for this virtual machine, but also we do not recommend it for production load, more from development or for testing. This is what is the actual scenario. And because of that, we're not going to talk about Cloud Cube at the moment, but I invite you to contact us if you want to know more about it. What we're going to talk about today is our enterprise servers, and this is important to stress. This is an enterprise platform that IONOS have been developing since 10 years ago, and is basically composed of 2 massive infrastructure, one that takes care of only the storage and the other one that takes only care of the CPU and the memory. This is extremely important because allow us to have the storage connected with an instance, a virtual instance, and this storage can be reconnected and expanded as much as you want. Every instance has what I call a 24 PCI lane, which means that you can connect as up to 24 drives on your virtual machines. As you can see, by default, we have no drives on our virtual machine, and we can select between 2 tiers, the hard drives or the SSD. And in between the SSD, there's two performance sizes. There's the premium and the standard. You can see the performance over here, down. And the SSD, quite common between the hyperscalers, and probably the same. At the moment that you increase the size of your drive, the performances will increase as well. Cloud, dedicated and virtualized machines have few things in common, which are the parts of the hardware that compose the machine. Cloud has a little bit more to add to the plate. You don't have to decide which machine is going to be the machine that you're going to use for the next year. There is no standard contract. It's a pay-as-you-use model, and this pay-as-you-use model applies to every single item that you see on the control panel. The simple fact that you're opening an account with IONOS, it doesn't mean anything. You're just creating an account. The account is free of charge, as well as having a BDC is free of charge. You start paying at the moment that you provision something and you start using something. And even that, because our billing system is really on demand, and we're going to bill you for every minute that you use something. If you want to use 100 machines for 10 minutes and then delete everything, we're gonna bill you just for the time that you had the 100 machine up and running, not more. And this obviously opens a big, it does have a big potentials in terms of the stress test of the machine, fire and forget development, and the list goes on and on and on, because cloud has been around for a decent amount of time, and there's lots of strategy that can literally boost up the performances of your development team, or help you save on the spending that today you have on dedicated and virtualized machine. I'm talking a lot though. Let's connect a hard drive to our virtual machine. For today's purpose, I'm just going to use a hard drive, but if you want, you could connect multiple disks inside a machine, and we do have Windows and Linux images, so you can literally select the flavors that you prefer more. Personal preference, I usually give a hard drive for the operating system and an SSD for the data, but this is obviously his personal preference. What we're going to do, I'm going to just give a name to my hard drive, HDD, and I'm going to select as image from my IONOS image, Ubuntu 20.04. Once I select the image, the form over here changes a little bit, allows it to set up a password, which is not going to be, our servers are secure in a way that even if you specify just the password, you're not going to be able to log in. We do this to avoid brute force type of attack. When you're creating a machine, you will have to get into the server and enable it manually. What we really recommend people to use, our customers to use, are SSH keys. Now, these SSH keys needs to be created, and if you do not have a practice with that, I recommend you to go on our help. We do have an extensive online help page reachable from our portal, when you can just simply click on virtual machine, and there's a DCD how to, an API how to, and over here you will see how to create an SSH key. It is also quite a common thing, so even if you Google it, you're going to find a lot of information. An SSH key basically is a two-part authentication system. One that's called the private key, one that's called the public key. And the private key stays on your computer and is needed to authenticate against the public key. The public key can be stored in the SSH key manager. Once that is in the SSH key manager, you will find it when you create a server on the right-hand side, and this will allow you to deploy this key automatically on every machine that you spin up. Now, I've been talking for the last 10 minutes. I do have a machine on my desk. I'm still not paying anything because this is not a real machine. This is a design. And this machine at the moment has 2 cores, 4 GB of RAM. The cores over here are dedicated. So unlike any other hyperscaler, IONOS will provide you with 2 cores with 2 hyperthread each. They are dedicated to you. You're not sharing this with anybody. This is because our platform, as I said before, is divided in 2 big clusters, and we can scale the 2 independently. Also, if you're switching off your virtual machine, literally if you power it off, you're freeing up computational and memory power for some other user. So you just pay for your storage. Now, I know that some of you will keep a machine on 24/7, 365, so that definitely doesn't apply. But for some of them, they have a variable workload. This could be really useful. Our machine is not connected to anything. We do have a network tab over here, but there are no virtual network interfaces. And now we're going to discuss about the network. Cloud and network is a kind of a complicated subject, so I'm going to try to keep it really, really simple. We do have what is called a software-defined network in our infrastructure. What that means that you just draw a line between your cloud servers to what you want. In this case, the internet connection. I want this machine to be connected to the internet, and all the software that we have in place will do the rest. It will assign a public IP address to your machine, will create a firewall that you can configure directly from the control panel, and will make sure that your machine is connected to the internet. Now, again, this is just a design. I haven't clicked on provision changes, but at the moment that I put together the machine, created a virtual network between the machine and the internet access, there's a new NIC over here. It's giving me already some information. Obviously, I do not have a name for this NIC. The MAC address and the IP address will be assigned on creation. But one really important thing that I want to show you is the firewall. Embedded on each virtual network interface that you create to your server, there is a firewall that is managed directly by our infrastructure. So this firewall is not part of the Linux distribution, it's not going to be part of your Windows server. This is going to be managed by the hypervisor and the network layer inside the hypervisor where we host your machine. This firewall has four possible options. Disabled, so lets everybody in and everybody out. Disable ingress connection, deny ingress connection, so it will work like the firewall that you have home, the router that you have home. When you connect your computer, nobody can really call you in, try to log in into your computer, but you can go out and browse the internet. Egress will deny every connection that goes from the server to the outside world, and bidirectional is what is called a simple deny all. Will just block the entire network, and you will have to open your network one rule at a time. To start with, I will always suggest to click on ingress, which makes your server a little bit secure. And then when you click on manage rule, in this case, I'm using a Linux server, so I'm gonna deploy a template that's called Remote Access Linux, which is going to deploy an SSH and a VNC rule. I don't need VNC, just need SSH, which is the protocol that you connect to a Linux distribution. And that's not enough, but to make it even more secure, I went on Google and I typed, what is my IP address? And into the source IP, I'm gonna put my IP address, so I know that this is gonna be the only IP address allowed to log in into this machine. I click on save. And again, I clicked on save. Nothing has been deployed yet. Everything is still under design. At the moment, I click on provision changes. There's going to be our provision window that's going to tell us that there is an issue because I've deleted one storage, which was the SSD they haven't used. I'll confirm that with my password. Okay. And then we do have a delta that is giving us a wrap up of what's just about to happen. So I do have my test demo in London. I do have no description. Version 0 means that I haven't changed anything yet. And I'm gonna add an enterprise server. The enterprise server has an hard drive of 10 GB and one network card. I'm gonna click on provision now, and the system is gonna take charge of provisioning all the items they're just described to you. Because it's a Linux server, it's going to take roughly 1.5 minutes, sometimes less. If it was to be a Windows server, he would get in between 3 and 5 minutes because of the licensing manager. Important for you to know that you cannot put Windows Server license in public cloud. This is something that's not possible for the contract that we have with Microsoft. You can bring your own license though for Microsoft SQL, any type of Microsoft SQL. That is up to you. to buy. Let's wait another few seconds and we should have our system up and running. What this is, hang on. Perfect. So what I'm going to do right now, as I'm on Windows, I'm going to click on the machine, click on my network tab, and now you can see that MAC address and IP address are being populated. Now, a little digression about public IP addresses. Cloud is fluid. Cloud help you to be scalable, and sometimes you need one, sometimes two, sometimes 6 servers, and then sometimes you have to go back to 2. Obviously, there's different way of scaling up and scaling down. Our system, the enterprise system, have the capability of scaling vertically, which means that you can freely add CPUs and memory whenever you want, as well as remove CPU and memories whenever you want. And this is particularly important if you don't want to scale horizontally, which means that you don't want to create a cluster, but you want to stay with one system. Because of that, when we assign an IP address to a machine, this IP address is not static. What it means is not static. It's not going to change while the machine is running. But if by any chance your machine gets deleted because someone makes a mistake, or if your machine needs to be recovered and you do not have time to wait, but you want to spin up a machine straight away, you will not be reassigned the same IP address. And it's important that you understand that we cannot port an IP address that's been assigned this way from a machine to another. But when you're setting up a DNS, you want to set up a DNS once, and you want the IP address to never change. Because of that, you can click on Resource Manager and then IP Manager. This part of our control panel will allow you to reserve to lease an IP address. We can call it test demo. You can reserve one or more, and automatically, based on the data center that you are, the system will suggest you which data center you want to reserve your IP address. If you want to use an IP address in Germany, obviously you will have to select the right data center. In this case, we're in the UK, so we selected United Kingdom, London, and click on Reserve IP Address. Once you click on that, you're gonna be charged £5 per month for this IP address. But please keep in mind that it is an incredible resource, because IP addresses on our infrastructure are extremely flexible. You can assign it to a machine. In this case, we can assign it as a secondary IP address to our server. Sorry. That's demo. And once at some point we decide that we don't want to use just a single cloud server, but we want to use a network load balancer, for example, and we want to build a more complex infrastructure to go in front of our system, we can remove the IP address from the cloud server and assign it to our load balancer. And this can go on for all the other network devices that we have in our platform. So it's really flexible, and it gives you that peace of mind where you know that you don't have to keep fiddling with the DNS names. So we provision these changes as well. And then we're gonna copy the IP address, and everything goes correctly. I'm able to log in into my Ubuntu server. Now, I've been talking a lot. This entire operation took 20 minutes, but you know, it's this is how fast you can get online. Now, obviously, this is just the beginning of the journey. This is a cloud server. We've done it through the DCD control panel. There are even faster way to deploy your system because we support whole loads of automation in our cloud infrastructure. And if you just want to start hosting a website, I usually recommend a tool which is quite easy. It's an open source tool. It's called ISP Config. And it's really similar to some product that probably you may know. It's similar to Plesk or Webmin. It's completely open source, it's well maintained, and it's really easy to understand. The website is ispconfig.com, and the installation of ipconfig is really just a line. So I'm going to show you what you can do with ispconfig. This is one of the most common installation procedure that you can see, where you can literally download a script, which is an sh script, and then this bash script will execute all the configuration needed to install how to forge, which probably many of you know as well, it's been around a while, considered the perfect HTTP server, including mail, including mailmen for mailing list, and DNS. Obviously, you can check the configuration, check what you need, but to see how easy it is to install, I can just copy paste the script, and if there is something, that is not what it needs to be with this script, it will tell you immediately, and will tell you, hey, that's something that you forgot to configure for me to install correctly. And the self-installation, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes. So, sorry. In this case, it should give me an error about my DNS name because I haven't pointed out that this is that needs to be a fully qualified name, or FQDN, which means that you have to point a proper A record to the IP address of the server. Now, here you go. We need an FQDN. Sorry. So yes, but it's telling me that I need a host name. It's not FQDN. So to do that, I just get the address, system, copy, and I just do ns lookup for the IP address, and will return me a name, which is the parts of my server. And this is going to be just enough to show you what I mean. Let's use nano tc host name, and let's paste the name, Control S, Control X, and then we can try again the installation. In this case, there are a few options like use Nginx, no DNS, no mail, use FTP ports. I can literally remove the FTP ports because I don't need this. So I forgot I need to reboot. This is just going to take a second. There you go. And we're on. Now, this installation itself, because it's fresh, is going to take a little bit because in the background, ISP config is also taking care of the security of the system, things that sometimes Plesk or Webmin failing to do. And it also helps you to maintain completely the security of the system, which means that it's telling you if some packets are up to date and you have to update it. It tells you if there is a new version of ISP config, and because it's all open source and well maintained, there's big sponsors behind it. The security is not like all other things, it's not guaranteed, but there is a high level of reliability behind this product. Now, just because I know that we do not have enough time and it will be a little bit short and my time is kind of getting to an end at this point in time, I want to leave time for questions. What I'm going to do, I have prepared an ISP config installation on a different instance. So I'm just going to move this away. It's on a different data center that I've got. So just prepare it before. So it's not called test demo, it's called demo test. and the IP address is 77.68.111.127. And I've already got it over here, which makes it easy. And as you can see, it gives you a great deal of flexibility. You can click on sites, and it's giving you the capability of creating a new website, creating database, create FTP account. And at the moment, I'm with the admin user, which doesn't have the full capability. It only creates the main account. Then you will have to log in with the client account, so to speak, and you can configure your username to access the FTP server. You can create, if you want, you can access a shell that is gonna keep you jailed inside your web environment. There are also nice touch, like it can calculate automatically the statistics for your website, can calculate the statistic for all the websites and aggregate it all together. And if you click on system, will give you an idea. Sorry, if you click on monitoring, will give you an idea if there is any issue or not. Will give you the capability to look inside the log of the machine without having to look inside the machine to log in through the shell. And it is a setup that works with a single server, monolithic servers, which you have an installation of Nginx or Apache and PHP and MySQL. It is also an installation that can work with multi-platform. Obviously, the installation is a little bit more complicated, but because it's so well documented, I'm sure that there's not going to be a problem if you're looking into it. There's also a manual that they're selling. It's only €5, and I highly recommend you to buy one if you really want to get into ISP config, because it's really well written. Apart from that, I hope that you enjoyed this demo, and I hope that you understand like how easy it is to get to a cloud server. There are plenty of other things that I do not have the time to tell you, because I don't know if really gonna get your traction or not. But by any means, subscribe to our control panel. You get to try it for free. You can try a little bit of workload without having to spend anything at all. Yeah, and you have the capability of talking with me or the other parts of the team, the solution architect, and we can suggest you what is the best way to migrate your workload, if you want to migrate your workload, if you think that cloud can be the right fit for you. With this, I'm done for today, and I'll pass the microphone back to Zoe. To everyone, thank you, and I'll speak to you later in the Q&A.
Thank you, Matteo, very much. It's been very informative. I'm just looking at the chat actually at the moment, but it's already been answered that yes, this session will be recorded, and you'll have a chance to have a look at it later or refer back to it. Let me have a look at my inbox. We have a few questions from earlier during the presentation. Let me ask a few of them. One of them was about on-prem infrastructure and a cloud account with us. Can we connect the two? How it works? If you can give us a bit more information on that.
Yes, sorry, I lost my mute button. Yeah, absolutely. So it is possible to some extent to connect your data center with our cloud. It has to be obviously a data center that has professional connectivity, cannot be your on-prem from the office. So is it possible to create an MPLS connection that goes directly into one of your VDC? And that would obviously guarantee to have your on-prem infrastructure to be directly connected and be part of your cloud network. That obviously simplifies lots of things, and in terms of compliance, it's a massive help if you do have some compliance you need to satisfy.
Oh, I was on mute now. Perfect, thank you. Another one that I've got, is there bandwidth limitations?
No, that's the short answer. Unlike any other provider, we do not limit the bandwidth in terms of the size of the machine. So many other hyperscaler will tell you that with this size of machine, you can only have this amount of load network and would limit your bandwidth. This is not the case for us. We do have no limit whatsoever. So you can use as much bandwidth as you want. There is a charge for the outgoing bandwidth, which is, I don't remember, we slashed the prices in February, so it's like 0.030 per gigabyte per month, but is still after the first gigabyte of bandwidth that you use.
Thank you for answering that one. Now I'm getting back to IP addresses. You did mention that you can reserve an IP address with us. That's all good. But how about if a customer already has their IP addresses, they want to keep them? Can they bring them over?
So in public cloud, this is not possible. If you have your own IP addresses, it's really difficult because, as I said before, there is a pool of public IP addresses, and it will be really impossible for us to understand which ones are yours and which one are someone else's. This is something that is possible if you own /24 IP addresses, and but it is only going to be possible in our private cloud environment, not the public cloud. And the public cloud is what we're talking today.
Excellent, thank you. How about encryption, Matteo? We've got a question here about encryption on our cloud platform.
Okay, so encryption. We are an infrastructure as a service provider. That means that many of the encryption that you need on the day-by-day, like your certificates or your data, is up to you to encrypt the most of it. Let's say that you want to store your data, credential, or credit cards into a database. That will be up to you to encrypt your data. We do work on some low-level encryption in our hard drives. Now, the hard drives, the HDD, are not encrypted. That means that if you want to use one of those, you will have to make sure that nobody gets the physical hard drive and recover your, steal the hard drive from the data center and recover your data. You know, we're talking about fantasy, so it's really difficult to get into our data center. The SSD instead is encrypted by default. So any SSD that you use, you can be 100% sure that the data is automatically written into the disk encrypted. This is something that happens at the cluster level, so your machine doesn't really know it. You just know that it's encrypted because this is how the data gets saved.
All right, thank you. And on the topic of SSD, so a customer has seen, you showed us that when you change the size of the disk, the performance changes, but like what are the limits? Up to what can we get in terms of performance?
So the performance on the hard drive is still quite performing compared to the other ones, and I invite everybody to test it. The SSD do have an SLA. Well, we don't have an. I don't think we do have an SLA on the hard drives, but we do have an SLA on SSD. And if you check on the control panel, you can see that the more gigabytes you get, the more IOPS and bandwidth you get. The maximum that you can get in terms of performances is when you reach the size of 600 gigabyte, when you're going to be able to use the full bandwidth of our SATA drives, which are 600 megabytes per second, with a maximum read of 45K and a write of 30K. This is something that you can see directly into the control panel, so it shouldn't be an issue when you're logging in. You just place an SSD into the infrastructure to the desk, and you can start fiddling with the pans, and you can easily see the numbers that you can get. Obviously, the premiums are not extremely cheap, but obviously if you need a good level of performances, that's what you want to get to. And this is again, I'm gonna go back to the fact that if you don't need it immediately, you can just decide that you want more performance later on. You don't need to start with the most performant disk. You always have time to change your configuration later on. You always have time to reset up later on without additional cost, right? You can just move the data across, or you can just redeploy your system and move the data.
Thank you. And then I've got one more here, but I encourage everyone who's willing to ask any questions, do put it in the chat. Opened up my inbox just a second ago. A few people have asked for the recording, so don't worry, it's coming. Last question was, how about with the CPU and cores on our cloud platform? How does it work?
Okay, the CPUs and core, we do have, as I said before, two different kind of offering, the enterprise cloud servers and the cloud cubes. On the enterprise cloud servers, you can buy a minimum of 1 CPUs, and this CPU is going to be, for your virtual machine, is going to be a physical socket. And this physical socket is hyper-threaded on our machine, which means that for your virtual machine are going to be 2 cores. This socket is 100% dedicated to you. You're not paying for something that is shared with other user. It's going to be there for you. If you're using it, it's going to be 100% yours. If you're not using it, it's not going to be time shared with other customers of ours. It's a dedicated core. Same thing for your for the memory. It's allocated to you, and this is part of the work that we've done in creating the 2 different clusters and making sure that all those resources are fully available to you all the time. On the cloud cubes, which are definitely cheaper cloud servers, obviously not all of the above applies. So first of all, the cloud cubes does have kind of a fixed amount of CPU memory and disk, while on the enterprise cloud servers you can mix and match wherever you want. But also, we do not sell CPU. We sell them with virtual CPUs, which means that they are shared in between each other. So the cloud cube is part of one big hypervisor. These hypervisors are sliced in some little pieces, which makes the cloud cubes. And if the cloud cubes are using all the same CPUs, so you may get lower performance, you can get some latency. That's why we recommend always the enterprise servers for production load.
Thank you. That's actually a question from me now. On our cloud platform, is it fair to say that you're getting like twice the performance from what the hyperscalers are doing? Because if I'm not mistaken, they do the hyper-threading thing, and we don't.
Well, I'm not sure if we can legally say that we'll get double the performances, but we definitely being assessed by third party, and if you search online, we are being recognized as the ISP, the cloud ISP, infrastructure as a service provider, that has more performance for money. And compared to the other hyperscaler, we're still quite cheap in terms of resources, and it's difficult to compare in cloud like for like, because as I said, like we do have dedicated CPUs, lots of hyperscalers do not have dedicated CPUs, but I suggest, I'll just like I'm asking everybody during your free trial, just get into one cloud servers, download one of the performance tool and start burning CPU and see what happens, because you will see that like independent assessors said, we are the most economical infrastructure as a service provider in terms of money per performance.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll just switch off the presentation for just a moment so that I can check on my inbox, see if anything else new has come through. Just a moment. A few more requests for the webinar. That's all right. I don't have questions though. Looking at the chat, last few seconds, if anyone's willing to ask a question, please do so. Or of course, you can always email us. I'll pop in the presentation again so that you can see the email. product@cloud.ionos.co.uk. Feel free, even after the webinar, drop us a line. We'll answer your question, whatever it is, as quickly as possible. And I hope you've enjoyed this Tech Talk, part of a series of Tech Talks that we're actually doing. You'll get the recording, and wish you all a wonderful, well, late afternoon and evening. Thank you very much. Bye.